All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're taking a really close look at PolyClaude. This is a fascinating new plugin for Claude Code that honestly fundamentally shifts how we interact with AI assistants. We're moving completely away from that standard single prompt, single answer model, and we're stepping into something called multi-perspective synthesis.
You know how it usually goes. You ask an AI a really high-stakes, complex question, and you usually get one extremely confident answer. And there's almost never any pushback, right? It just agrees with your premise or confidently charts out a single path. But what if your AI actually challenged you? What if it brought a truly adversarial voice into the room before you committed to a massive technical decision? Well, we're going to explore exactly how PolyClaude pulls that off.
Here's our roadmap for today's explainer. First up, the single perspective problem. Then we'll meet the PolyClaude council, walk through the 5-step pipeline, check out the council report, break down the configurations and costs, and finally look at when you should actually use this thing.
Okay, part 1, the single perspective problem.
Picture this. You're facing a massive engineering choice. You go to Claude Code and ask a huge strategic question, like, should we rewrite the auth system or patch it? Under normal circumstances, you get one answer, and it's shaped by one dominant perspective. It might sound totally reasonable, but it could also be confidently wrong in ways that neither you nor the AI will catch. Why? Because there's literally no secondary voice in the room to point out the flaws.
When you just use standard direct prompting, you run a massive risk of anchor bias. The AI locks onto its initial idea and kind of unconsciously smooths over any underlying tensions just to give you a coherent, clean answer. PolyClaude prevents this entirely. Instead, it spawns parallel, totally independent agents, lets them act as explicit adversarial voices, and then brings all their messy, conflicting thoughts together using structured dialectical synthesis. Which brings us to part 2. Enter the PolyClaude Council.
So rather than just tweaking a system prompt behind the scenes, PolyClaude dynamically spawns up to 6 specific thinkers. First, there's the user advocate. They're always included, making sure you don't forget how a decision actually feels to the end user. Then you've got the architect, mapping out dependencies. The pragmatist, who just wants to know what's easiest to ship. The innovator, tossing out wild alternatives. And the temporal analyst, basically asking, hey, how is this going to age in 6 months? Depending on your specific question, PolyClaude builds the most relevant mix of these minds.
To really get a feel for this, let's just look at the skeptic for a second. This persona isn't just some generic B-negative prompt. They act as a forensic truth seeker. They actively audit your load-bearing assumptions and hunt for edge cases way before you ship. It's basically that one rigorously honest voice on your engineering team that saves everybody from deploying an absolute disaster.
Moving right along, part 3. The 5-step pipeline. The real trick here is how these agents work together without accidentally influencing each other too early on. The pipeline goes like this. First, it classifies your question. Is this architecture, UX, strategy? Second, it selects the right mix of agents. But step 3 is the magic. It analyzes in parallel. These agents literally cannot see each other's work during this phase, so there's zero chance of them anchor biasing one another. After that, step 4 synthesizes their dialectical arguments, and step 5 spits out the findings.
All right, part 4, the council report.
So, when the dust settles and the pipeline finishes, you don't just get a giant, unreadable wall of chat text or some random list of opinions. You get a structured decision document. It hands you a bottom-line verdict, highlights points of consensus, maps out the key tensions, and, this is crucial, points out blind spots, things that absolutely none of the perspectives manage to figure out. Having this structure is just incredibly valuable when you have to take this output and actually defend a technical decision to your stakeholders. A massive part of that structured output is the confidence map. It explicitly shows you exactly where the council's analysis is rock solid and where it's a bit shaky. So technical feasibility might flag as high confidence because every single agent agreed. But your timeline estimate? That might hit low confidence because, say, the pragmatist and the temporal analyst had completely divergent views.
The synthesis step also beautifully highlights key tensions. Let's say the pragmatist wants to just ship a quick patch right now to unblock the team, right? But the architect is waving a massive red flag about structural technical debt. PolyClaude structures that exact tension of speed versus correctness and literally acts as a neutral referee, proposing a very conscious, balanced way to resolve it.
Okay, section 5, configurations and costs. Obviously, running parallel AI agents isn't free. But PolyClaude gives you levers to control how much analytical horsepower you're spinning up. You can use the quick flag for just 2 agents, perfect for a fast sanity check. The default runs 4 agents, or you can hit the full flag for all 6. You also choose between the faster Claude Sonnet models or the really deep analytical Opus models. And costs? They scale from around 15 cents all the way up.
Let's talk about that top end. A maximum depth query using all 6 Opus agents, that's going to run you roughly $2.25. Now, $2 might sound a little expensive for a single chat prompt, but when you realize this is acting as an enterprise-grade decision engine for choices that could easily cost a company tens of thousands of dollars if they get it wrong, that $2.25 becomes an absolute steal.
Which brings us to our final section, when to actually use PolyClaude.
Knowing the compute cost and the time it takes to run these parallel agents, you've got to be smart about deployment. The ideal use cases? Big architecture decisions, like choosing between a monorepo or a polyrepo. Major strategy questions, like an enterprise pivot, or complex API design reviews. But what is it absolutely not for? Please, do not use a 4-agent council to spend 30 cents figuring out how to name a variable. It's totally overkill.
The source material actually sums this up perfectly with this quote. The tool's value scales with the decision's ambiguity and cost of being wrong. It hits the nail on the head. You want to reserve PolyClaude for those critical, highly ambiguous moments where making the wrong choice is just unacceptably expensive, whether that's in time, money, or technical debt.
As we wrap up this explainer, I'll leave you with this. Think about your next major project, or that next big architectural decision looming on the horizon. Before you write a single line of code or commit to some massive refactor, ask yourself, do you have the right adversarial voices in the room? With PolyClaude, you finally have a way to spin up a whole council of brilliant, disagreeing minds right on demand. It's a game changer for making sure you're making the absolute best decision possible.